Thank you very much for being here. This piece is called Flight of the Zebra. It was made in 1997. This piece happened right before I became a professional artist. This piece is what I would call a rock star piece. Every once in a while, as an artist, you make a piece that just kind of launches itself. And that was the case with this piece. It was actually selected to go to the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C. There was a statewide competition. 35 pieces were selected to travel to the museum. This was one of them, and my mother and a family friend and Maggie Tieneman had a piece there as well. And we all went to the opening at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. My mother and friend, Sue Lindbergh, and I think Rolf Tieneman as well, they were taking photos. You know, it was a great photo op. Here I am in this wonderful museum with my painting, and I'm standing here, and next to me is a piece by Hollis Sigler, and my family's taking the pictures. And afterwards, total strangers who were at the opening came up to me and told me how much they loved my piece. They were talking about Hollis's piece. They weren't talking about my piece. Flight of the Zebra also has human elements. You're going to see in this work, I merge human and animal attributes. For whatever reason, I love to delve into anthropomorphism, and you're going to see it all over the place in this work. I've been doing paintings my whole life. The three-dimensional work is a little bit newer. I've been doing the three-dimensional animals since about 2004. This piece and then the companion piece on the other pedestal over there are both supposed to be bears. Now, the funny part about these two pieces is that when I was shaping the heads, I accidentally turned them into my two dogs. So this is actually my Siberian Husky, Juno, whose face, she's now not with us anymore physically, though she's with me all the time in other ways. But she would hunch down and she would have this expression on her face. And I didn't even realize it until I showed this I showed this piece at a show in Washington, D.C., came home, she walked into the den, and I said, oh my gosh, it's the piece. I didn't even realize I had done a portrait of her. And then to top everything off, one of her hairs is stuck on the back of her. And I did not do that intentionally. I found that out later. So this one is called Beast. And another thing I love about this piece is it's a beast, but there's a very submissive feel to it. So it's kind of sending two messages. That anthropomorphic element that I really enjoyed doing in the paintings, I really wanted to carry that through to the animal forms. And the easiest way I could do that was by putting human eyes in these animal forms. You're going to see either antique doll eyes, a few doll taxidermy eyes, or in this case, antique human prosthetic eyes in all of these animal forms. That is a way for me to impart humanity into these pieces. The eyes are the most important part I can do on a piece. When I doodle, if I'm talking on the phone and I'm doodling, I doodle eyes. This one I think only has one layer of eyes. This piece is called Repara. This is a beaver, and I want to start talking about this piece by telling you a story. I participate in the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival in New Orleans, and I was there a few years ago and had a little extra time, so I went on a voodoo and cemetery tour in the French Quarter. I went into an actual functioning voodoo temple, and when I walked into the temple, there was a priestess in the temple. Now, with the voodoo religion, I don't know that much about it, but they blend some Catholic saints with some of the African Haitian deities. So you saw some altars around the space in honor of these different merged deities. In the corner of this particular voodoo temple, there was an altar to Black Hawk. Now, I was astounded by that, because to me, Black Hawk is a bank, or it's a road, or it's a statue that really isn't even Black Hawk anyway. Black Hawk didn't have a lot of spiritual meaning to me, and yet this voodoo temple in New Orleans had an altar to Black Hawk. So we had to go around and we told the priestess where we were all from, and I said I'm from the Rock River Valley, home of Black Hawk, and everybody looked at me like I was a freak, including the priestess, because she didn't know what in the hell I was talking about. So I explained to her that I'm from where Black Hawk was from. So she asked me when I came home to get some soil from this area and send it to her so she could add it to the altar. So my friend went to the riverbank by the statue, got some soil. I sent it to New Orleans to the Voodoo Temple to be included in this altar. Apparently, there was a voodoo priestess in Chicago who had a very moving vision, and Black Hawk appeared to her. She then moved to New Orleans, started a voodoo spiritual movement in New Orleans, and because of this vision, Black Hawk became a part of this religion. He is a protective masculine force in some of the voodoo culture in New Orleans, and that's our Black Hawk. So I went to the local history room of the Rockford Public Library and met with a gentleman named John Mawinell, who is extremely knowledgeable about local history, and I spent an afternoon with him. I told him I wanted to do a piece that represented the people who were here before us, the people who were here before the Europeans. And I wanted it to be an animal because that's what I did. So I started saying a few animal options. I came to beaver and he said, "Stop, you're done." He said the beaver, to the people who lived here before the Europeans came, this was their bread and butter. And it became even more important as the French and English moved into this area because of the fur trade. The beaver was the single most important commodity to the people who lived in this area. So I decided to do a beaver. This particular beaver, actually I took soil from my backyard and mixed it in with the grout. We were going to move into the doll part pieces. What happened is I stumbled upon these antique German doll parts. And what this allowed me to do was take that anthropomorphism a step further. Now it's not just eyes. Now I can actually put a human face inside of a bird. And this was very exciting to me. Here you can see legs and human faces in this owl, because for whatever reason, I need to do that. That's where I land. That's where I'm going to come back to. And this was allowing me to do it with my three-dimensional work. Also with this piece and this piece here as well, I'm doing a little bit more of an environment, which is allowing me a little bit more of a narrative, which is, again, something I like. Right here you're going to see an eye egg. There are eye eggs in the gift shop. This would be the first eye egg I made. I made an eye egg specifically to go in this piece. These fuchsia beads around the glass, or around the collar, are vintage glass jewelry components. I use a lot of vintage materials. This is an awesome color, and I should have bought every single one that I saw when I bought these, because it's my favorite color. If any of you stumble upon a lot of these, let me know. This is what I call the cracked head babies. What happened was last August, Scott and I, my significant other, and also the sculptor of some of these underlying forms, we were having a bad day. We were not getting very much done. Nothing was popping with our art. We weren't feeling really good about the day. We went down to Scott's studio in the basement, and Scott had accidentally dropped a doll head and broken it. So we took these two doll pieces and we overlapped them and distorted them and created this figure. This was not something either one of us were doing. This is just something that happened. We call him Humpty Dumpty Day. And I like to tell you that Humpty Dumpty can be put back together again. This piece right here is another one of these cracked head babies. In this case, I'm actually breaking doll heads. I try to break the doll heads that already are cracked, because I don't like to destroy the ones that are not cracked, though I do every once in a while. So what happens is we actually accelerate the cracks on one of these heads, and then I take the pieces and I position the pieces until an animal pops out. And in this case, I was positioning the pieces and a cardinal popped out. So then the whole form is built around that, whatever happens with those face fragments. This piece is called Buzz, and this is from 2008. This is a brand new piece. I will say that these cracked head babies, obviously not if it's a human form, but when they are in animal form, they're again letting me go a little bit further into this anthropomorphism, because I'm taking that human head and making it look like an animal, which I like. This particular piece, we had a friend who came over. She had had a very bad day at work, and she's a nurse and just had a bad day at work. So I gave her a doll head, and she went down to the basement. She put it in a vise, and I let her crack it. And this is the piece that came out of us letting a friend vent a little bit on a doll head. And that's the end of my talk. So thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for listening.